Welcome to the Crazy Dre Podcast Show. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, back to you. This time we're going to have to talk about a little bit more than just sports and politics. We're going to bring about Art Prize and a person that has lived through the CBGB era. And her name is Renee. And Renee is in Grand Rapids as we speak doing Art Prize. And this is how I met her. So welcome to the show, Renee.
Thanks.
And Renee, you are a longtime artist, longtime personnel that does artwork and that type of field. Do you want to elaborate to the audience what you do,
Sure.
how you become where you at?
Yeah, I started in terms of Grand Rapids. There's three projects I've done the last 3 years as part of Art Prize. The first year was 2023, and that was my venue has been all 3 years Vicinity Energy. So if you know downtown well, Vicinity Energy is a steam power plant that was built by Edison in 1888.
Mhm.
And I really like the venue. They're very accommodating, and it's really easy. And I come up with ideas that have to do with the history of that building, that space, that actual site. And so, what's really important to me is sort of revealing layers of history and having conversations about the different things that are underneath the um, the surface. So most importantly, coming from that building, there are steam power pipelines that send steam out to downtown. And yeah, and so I walked around downtown and marked the steam power lines with chalk and waited for people to sort of with a roller. I had a, a, a sort of a little cart that I pulled behind with all my supplies. So I waited for people to ask me what are you doing? And so I said, I'm making the invisible visible. And then I'd ask them what else is hidden. Um, and then the idea was to have a longer term conversation about what was here before the settlers came and took over and built downtown. So that was a very interesting how much people were interested or how little they were interested. So
Oh,
the questions are kind of open. Uh,
yeah. So, so technically, when I was walking by, I was coming back from, I think I was coming back from um, a restaurant, Bridge Street Bar on the west side, going to Founders. Uh, and then I bumped into you, and then you also had a little, kind of like a little exhibit for yourself of the kind of like dirt, sand, and coal. It looks like
y-
coal.
yeah, yeah. So that's my project this year. It also goes back to the specifics of the site. It's like this little concrete space that has this beautiful mural that was painted in 2023, but it's like a parking spot right next to the plant. And so I thought about this idea of footprint because they are in the process, the steam power plant is in the process of decreasing their carbon footprint. But then I thought, it's not just about the carbon footprint. There's so many other things that come along with our footprints and with a footprint. And so the idea was to let people stand in these natural materials in a place that's not a natural space and get them to think about where they've been and where they've walked and how that feels to walk on wood chips and to walk on sand. And then you can also leave an impression in the sand as well. You see
Yeah.
your footprint clearly. And if you stand on the coal, it's like pieces from an old fire pit. And if you stand on that coal, it makes a noise like a fire. So people found this, it's like crinkling, like the sound of a fire. So it's kind of interesting. And then they're also invited to make footprints on the concrete and canvas with some of those natural materials, including a gypsum, which is also another material that was mined here early on when settlers arrived.
Yeah, yeah. So that's fascinating that you how you as a person can come up with the ideas of how to interact with the people in Grand Rapids during Art Price. And then of
Yeah.
course along the way I had my CBGB shirt on,
Yeah.
and you're now the second person that I've come across in Grand Rapids that's told me that one person told me she grew up around that area, but you are the one that told me that you grew up during that era, and then you also somewhat participated in it
Yeah.
because your sister happened to be in that area as a college student.
Right. So my sister had moved to New York City as a college student, and I was the you know, younger teenage sister. And so I would go visit her and stay in her dorm or stay wherever I could. And then we would go bar hopping. And I was 14, 15 years old. I guess and at that point in time, nobody was checking IDs. Nobody really cared. And so we did all of the most famous bars of that era. Insane. Um, my favorite, I mean, the one CBGB's was just kind of grungy but cool. There was just
Mhm.
a lot of different things going on. I think CBGB's is though where I fell asleep on the side of the dance floor at like 2 in the morning because I just was like too tired. But other places that were from that same era, which is just it was they're iconic. The Limelight was a small church that was they set up scaffolding in front of this Jesus um, stained glass window. So you're on the sidelines looking down on the stage and you have Jesus looking over your shoulder. That
Mhm.
was wild. Um, Another one was the Palladium, which was this old theater, and old theaters used to have moon and the stars on the ceiling, and so they sort of went with that over. It was kind of half a ruin, and everything was like blue and beautiful, and it was this whole entire cinema that was just it was a dancing huge dance floor and all these ways to get down and platforms to look over the floor and it was incredible. And then, of course, the amazing Studio 54, which my sister spent a lot of time at that time. She knew the owners. She went there regularly enough. Of course, everyone went there to be seen and be seen, but I wasn't that amazing. But it was really cool because she was going at that time. She was going to fashion school, and because she was at the state school and the fancy Parsons school was got like an industry fashion show, and she arranged with the owners of Studio 54 at the height of Studio 54's history to do her graduation fashion show at Studio 54.
Really?
Yeah,
Well, that's crazy. So
yeah.
let's go back to your. So wait a second. So did you grow up within New York, or you're like where'd you
We lived
drive?
up what you say upstate. When you live in New York, upstate is anything out of the city. And if you're deep in the city, upstate can just be an hour north, but we were 3 hours north in the Finger Lakes.
So you just took the subway down for 3 hours and went to visit
No,
your.
we would drive down and visit, but it was I would say and when I was once I was a high school student, came up on my own or with friends. We'd drive up on our own when we were 16, 17. Once we got a driver's license.
Yeah. So how
So
crazy was it with that? So I mean, you got did you see anyone that was like huge, like the Ramones? Did you the Talking Heads? All
I
those.
didn't wasn't yeah, all those people, I didn't even pay attention to who was playing there. I can't even remember. I think I remember at CBGB's that I knew who was playing, but I didn't nah, I think we also were students. We went to things that were cheap, like that we could just get in or not pay like huge overhead to get in. But
So
I don't
was
remember. I'm trying to think if I ran into anyone famous. I ran into Patti Smith a couple times in New York, but
yeah, yeah, that what's that band that she was in? She was what was it? I can't believe I can't remember the now. Patti Smith.
I just think of Patti Smith. I don't think of her in other bands, but
Yeah, so wait, so how was I mean, did you just was it just like free for all? I mean, was New York that way where the drugs were
it
out there, the people out there,
oh, that was one thing. I got lured into a back room once where they're like, "Hey, you want some?" And there were like a couple lines of Coke. It was Coke. It was the era before crack, during Coke. Like Coke was just everywhere.
yeah.
But I never did it. I walked away.
Wow,
Um,
that's so was it just like a bunch of teenagers living? I mean, what I feel like what New York was back then in the 1970s, what I've was told, but I understood that a lot of the people that were suburbians that lived in New York left downtown New York and moved to the suburbs of
Yeah.
New York, like upstate and all that in the
Yeah.
60s. In the 70s and the 80s, especially in the 70s, it became a kind of like a dirty, greasy city where everything was run down and basically
It was
teenagers kind of rule the area
I
without ruling anything.
wasn't that conscious of being like a teenager with other teenagers, but yeah, I'm sure that students did. And I do remember Times Square was absolutely grungy, grody, gross. With in the early '80s, there are all these triple X movies, and they were tearing down theaters, and it was not at all sort of glitzy like it is now. I
No,
mean, there were always the screens, and there were always, it was the days when Brooke Shields had her poster up on, multiple posters. But yeah, it was definitely grungy and really scary in general. The city was scary.
oh, it was scary. It wasn't like fun. It was just more scary.
It was both. I don't know. I would walk for hours. Everywhere you walked was just like it was just
You were lost
dirtier.
for hours. So that must have not been that scary for a 15-year-old high school girl. Like, you know what? I'm
That's true.
going to visit my sister, and my sister's busy right now. So I guess I'm going to me and my group of my friends are just going to take a stroll. I mean, that's
Yeah,
to me, that's what you do in Grand Rapids. Now,
yeah,
here,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, we did. I mean, I did. I just sometimes I would walk from Soho, which is way down south of Houston, all the way up to Midtown and to Times Square or to the Museum of Modern Art or something, and just you just walked. You just checked it all out. I
and
don't know.
anything crazy that you just kind of saw besides that moment where they lured you to the back to see if you want to do a line of cocaine?
Yeah, no, nothing wild, nothing, no stories that I like recount of craziness. I remember one time I was really young and I didn't tell my mother and that I was walking. And it was crazy. It was like 11 o'clock at night and I was terrified, but I made it. I walked from like Union Square up to Midtown. It was a mile and a half, but it was just, the middle of the night. I just crossed the street and kept walking. But he never, I don't know, never saw any crime. I mean, they talked about all the crackdown on crime that came later where they were just, grabbing people if they tried to jump the turnstiles and stuff. I never witnessed any of that.
So you were
That really
almost
bad
way
stuff.
too young to like enjoy that. Well, I wouldn't say enjoy, but live that era where punk rock and a bunch of early 20-year-olds and late teens would go to CBGB, other clubs, and then just get smashed or drunk or whatever, and then listen to the Talking Heads and like say, "Hey, I saw the
Yeah.
Talking Heads at CBGB." So that must have been really weird for you to just know that you lived in that era. Now New York City's totally clean. Any like, do you have any interest in going back to New York to live? Because you don't live in anywhere in New York, right? You live
So my
outside.
sister still my sister still lives outside of New York. So I go to New York once or twice a year. So I get to see I've seen and watched things sort of change. The stores go in and out, the flagship stores, and then these crazy silly things. There's like a five-story Starbucks in Times Square, which I would not go to,
Yeah,
especially now. I mean, there are these flagship stores that just do goofy things with whatever they're trying to sell.
yeah, yeah,
There's an M&M store, and it's just all tourist traps. But
yeah,
there's nothing like New York, though. I mean, the combination of things. People who move away, even young people now, are like they can't. They're used to partying all night still, which you do also in other places in the world. But in New York, you can still party all night and go from one place to another, and
yeah. That's true because like in Grand Rapids,
Mhm.
as soon as the city
This-
falls asleep at a
yeah,
certain time, especially
yeah,
on this side of the highway of 131, as
yeah,
soon as everyone's out, it's bedtime. On the west side,
yeah,
it's where most of the college kids live, or
yeah.
where most and all that stuff, that can stay open till 2 o'clock in the morning because most of the
Okay.
bars over there, like the Anchor Bar, the Steel Cat, even the Bridge Street Bar, which is a new sports bar, uh, O'Toole's on the west side, they they'll be
I'll stay
open
open.
till two
Okay.
a.m.
Yeah.
But in reality, the closest bar that would resemble probably CBGB back then is probably the bar on the east side of Grand Rapids, which is Mulligan's, and
Yeah. Okay.
Mulligan has that unwealthy that have that grungy, smelly feel to it,
Yeah.
and people that are regulars there bring that atmosphere to it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can tell it's where a lot of the Kiwanis college kids go, and then it's not their bar, but it's a bar that they can go to when during the
Yeah.
school year. But yeah, that's probably the only bar that I would tell you to check out at Mulligan's. The
Yeah.
meanwhile, bar in Grand Rapids is kind of the same way. No TVs, but it's a kind of craft brewing uh, venue for different Michigan beers there. But I mean, like you live in Minnesota, right?
Yes.
How come you live in Minnesota? What's the
Oh,
big thing?
married, had kids, settled down there. So family was always East Coast, though. We were always from around between Washington and New York.
Okay, okay. Do you like? So you must love Minnesota because Minnesota's pretty. It's got 10,000 lakes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If you're rich enough to have a house on the lake or know people who have cabins, that's the best. But if you don't, yeah, it's nice. It's definitely it's a good place to have kids, raise kids, and the weather is kind of cold, but you get used to it. You have to embrace the cold.
Oh, do you really? How about how
Yeah.
about how about upstate New York? Is it worthwhile to live up in New York?
That's upstate New York is also very beautiful. If you're lucky, I think the upstate stuff on along the Hudson River Valley is really fun because there are still trains that go down to the city. So there's a lot of people during COVID who moved up, and it's getting more populated, and there's
Yeah,
interesting things going on.
yeah. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how many times do you think that are people that have never been into New York should go to New York, and where would you send them if it's not like the Times Square? You're like, if you don't want to see
Oh,
advertisement, where would you want to tell them to
New York
go?
City, I would walk. I'd still do I still think what's interesting to me is Soho. Soho's coming and going. It changes a lot. It's south of Houston. It's like a bunch of old factory buildings that artists took over, and then all the stores came in, and now the stores are they left, but then other stores are coming back. So it's a weird mixture of artists and stores and storefronts and funky things.
Uh-huh.
Um, Chelsea, always the High Line. I don't go to bars like I used to, so I can't
No.
recommend any cool bars. But the High Line is a highlight. Just walking is huge. The High Line goes from 14th to 33rd, where the new train station is. It's they took a post office and turned it into a train station because they tore down the old train station that was
Oh yeah,
next
yeah,
door.
yeah. They,
So that's the Long Island. They say it's the Long Island Railroad. It's a big, beautiful train station, but you can go there and walk down the High Line from there. It's really awesome.
huh?
Mm.
Like, so yeah, that must be wild to be that young, not knowing that you were in that era.
Right.
That
Until you find out afterwards, there's movies made about it, and
yeah, yeah,
it's like,
and,
oh, I was there. It
yeah.
was a
So
bar.
that'd be the weirdest thing in the world to be from New York, and then like yeah, I lived in New York, but I didn't feel the same way as people from outside New York or people telling stories about New York.
Yeah.
That'd be
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's
So, folks, I think I like to thank Renee for showing up on the show.
my
Uh,
pleasure.
it was
Go to
awesome.
Art Prize. Enjoy Art Prize if you haven't gone yet.
Yes, yes, and I'm sure that you're going to give me your links so I can share the links for you,
Yep.
uh, whoever you, and then that way that they can connect with you, so on and so
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah, I have an Instagram that's called pip.footprint.artprize.25. So that shows what I'm doing as I put my footprints all over town. So if you walk around downtown, you'll see my footprints in different places, actual barefoot footprints.
Oh,
And the art prize number is 23444. If you're looking for the number, if you search for it, you look just for footprint, 23444.
cool.
Give me a vote. The voting closes on October 2nd.
It does. It does. She is right, folks. Grand Rapids Art Prize, one of the best things that this country holds, especially in the state of Michigan. Thank you again. Thank you for the listeners out there. Pop up, back up to me. Subscribe, follow, Patreon, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you can download a podcast. Thank you so much. Cheers,
Thanks.
and
Cheers.
and have a good night, everyone.